Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Brazil once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery I've never tried anything from before. So as I've told you in my previous Brazilian reviews, I've been very impressed with the standard of beer that I've had from there so far, and it's nice to see that some of their beers are starting to make their way across to Europe, and long may that continue. I do hope that we start to see some beers from the other Latin American countries at some point soon as well, because I know that there's some great breweries in Argentina and Chile as well. So hopefully it's not too long before we see those up here as well. But I would recommend you try some of the Brazilian stuff if you get the chance. But yeah, like I said, for this review, we are going to go to another new brewery to the channel. We're going to head back to Sao Paulo, which seems to be a little bit of a beer hub in Brazil these days. And we're going to have a look at my first beer from Cervejaria Augustinus. This particular beer is called the Cacao. It comes in at 11.5% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout with vanilla and cocoa nibs added into it. So yeah, really looking forward to this. This brewery are supposed to be very good when it comes to the Imperial Stout category and also the high alcohol beers in general. And they seem to be really well respected actually. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. Fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it. So incidentally, this beer was bought from Beer Dome down in the Netherlands, who have a great selection of Brazilian stuff. They've also got a very good selection of Russian things as well. So if you want to pick up some beers from unusual places, then Beer Dome in the Netherlands is definitely where you do it. You will pay a little bit more for these Brazilian beers. I think I paid somewhere in the region of like €8-9 for this one, but the main reason for that is, you know, the transportation, and of course I think Mercosur doesn't have a free trade agreement with the European Union yet. So yeah, that is unfortunately one of the things. You will have to pay a bit more for these Brazilian beers, but to try something a little bit unusual, I think it's worth it, and I will be keeping an eye on what Beer Dome have from Brazil over the next little while, and we'll try and do at least one Brazilian order a year, I would think, so that we can keep reviewing the Brazilian stuff. But yeah, definitely cool to add another Brazilian brewery to the growing list of reviews here on the channel, and I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. But yeah, let's crack on with the review then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done, or I will do in the future, I should say, from Cervejaria Augustinus. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Brazilian beers that I'm reviewing for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, and I hope that we can continue to add to that in the future. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then. So, Cervejaria Augustinus, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and the company was founded by Gabriel Cunha and Leonardo Indini. So Leonardo apparently first got the idea to start brewing beer along with two friends, Flavio Dechin and Diogo Pantelao. So they used to drink beer often together, and they were a big fan of the Belgians, the double IPAs and the high alcohol beers. So they decided that they were going to take a basic brewing course and try and brew their own clones of some of their favourite beers. But they started brewing together in about 2013, but over time Diogo stopped participating in the brewing, and then eventually Flavio stopped as well. So Leonardo called Gabriel at this point to join him, and then things really kicked off for them. But over the coming years they continued to develop their recipes, and then their beers gradually gained fans, but they were helped out by a few other breweries in the beginning, such as Trilha and Cinco Elementos, with whom they did various different collaborations, and they currently operate as a gypsy brewery in Sao Paulo and brew their beers in a number of different places, including Trilha, Cinco Elementos and the Diva. But the first commercial beers from this brewery under the name Cervejaria Augustinus appeared in 2018. But they chose the name Augustinus from St. Augustine, who is of course the patron saint of brewers, and the artwork on the cans is designed by the aforementioned Flavio as well. But as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 32 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and two of the notable ones from this brewery are the Death in the Abyss, which was brewed with Cinco Elementos. That's a 20% Imperial Stout, and also the Dead by Dawn, which is a 24% Imperial Stout. These guys are known for their big, heavy hitting beers. So yeah, there's a lot of Imperial Stouts from these guys. There's one or two barley wines as well, and I think it's very uncommon actually to find a beer from these guys that is under 10%. The only ones that I could see in the Untappd list were sour beers. So yeah, I think if you're having a regular beer from these guys, it's going to be a big beast of a beer actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Cervejaria Augustinus for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, although they don't seem to be too active on that. They've got a shop, but they're not too active on it otherwise. But I would recommend that you have a little look at their social media. They've got the Instagram and they've got Facebook as well. You can look at those to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, that is it for your history section for Cervejaria Augustinus. So let's have a little look at the beer itself then. So just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up, I have to say I really like the artwork on this. The artwork on their beers is impressive if you take a little flick through the Untappd page actually. But yeah, you can see, would this be Incan? Yeah, I think it would be Incan, wouldn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong, it's Incan or Aztec. I want to say Incan. But yeah, the artwork on this, I have to say, is absolutely lovely. So, you know, big ups to Flavio for this. One thing I should also point out about this beer is I believe this one is the second batch that they did. The original batch that they did apparently was 11% ABV. This one is 11.5. So this particular batch I think was released in February of 2019. So yeah, I'm drinking this beer when it's actually a little bit over 2 years old. So this one must have been sitting for quite a wee while in the beer dome warehouse, if you like. So yeah, this one I think should be nice. But it actually says, I don't know if F is, it says 520 on the bottom of the can there. So I'm not sure, but you know, when it's an 11.5% Imperial Stout, I don't think we're going to have any problems with this one in terms of whether the beer's lasted or not. But yeah, an Imperial Stout with cocoa and vanilla. 11.5%. This is a 350ml can, and like I said to you, I think I paid about €8 for this, because you know, you will pay a bit more because of the transport and the lack of a trade deal and things like that, so there'll be an import tariff and so on. But yeah, you know, €8, so that's roughly about like £7 sterling, and maybe somewhere in the region of like $9.50 American, something like that. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious to see what this has in store for us, and I'm just hoping I don't break the can. There we go. No, it's okay. Yeah, this should be nice. Let's get this guy out and into the glass then. Oh geez, look at that. Damn. Just look at how thick this thing is. I'll just let you see that. Look at that. Don't know if you can see how well you can see it because of my t-shirt, but just look how thick and oily that thing is. You can feel the weight in the glass now as well. Jesus. That's mental. That is actually crazy. That's one of the thickest pours I've seen in near enough 3,000 reviews here on the channel. That's impressive. That is very impressive. Let me just line this up once again so that my OCD is happy. I think that's that. Back a little bit more. There we go. But yeah, that is actually mental. This thing, oof, that's got to be one of the thickest and densest Imperial Stouts that I've come across. The weight in the glass here is unbelievable. But yeah, anyway. So, as you can see with this one, it's poured a lovely, dark, ebony rosewood colour. This is exactly what you'd expect from an Imperial Stout. When we poured the beer, it did have a tiny little bit of head on it. It's just faded away to pretty much nothing now and left a little foamy layer around the edge of the glass there. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, one or two tiny little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I say head, but just pretty much going up to the surface. But yeah, other than that, it looks, you know, it looks kind of nice. It's pretty impressive, actually. This one, like I say, this is one of the thickest Imperial Stouts that I've come across so far. So yeah, that's interesting. But you know, if these guys are doing beers that are like, 20 and 24% and things like that. It's a bit crazy. Probably a lot of their stouts are like double and triple mashed and things like this. So yeah, anyway, but like I said, this beer is pretty much black as night, ebony rosewood. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour, of course. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts and barrel aging, of course, can affect the colour of your beer, but that's mainly when we're talking about sour beers, though. It's not really going to affect IPAs or imperial stouts like this too much. I've only seen it in an imperial stout once where an adjunct has really changed the colour of the beer. But yeah, this one looks exactly as you would expect from an imperial stout. And I'll tell you something, the weight in this beer, this is dense as hell. This is dense as anything. So yeah, interesting to say the least. Interesting to say the least with this beer. So yeah, the notable thing about the appearance of this one was certainly the pour, and as I say, the weight of this thing is unbelievable. But yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma then, and just see how we get on with this. Very, very curious about this beer. Yeah, kind of what you'd expect. A lot of vanilla, a lot of kind of chocolate to it, and then a lot of booze. So I suspect that this beer will be potentially double mashed and potentially, a very long boil or something like this. You can smell a lot. You get a lot of brown sugar out of this one. It comes across as like sort of highly treacalized and stuff like this. So this is probably like a big, it's probably got a boil of like 5-6 hours, something like that on it to give it these things. And it's also just, I get the feeling from the sheer density of this beer that it probably is double mash. The other thing to remember is that it's an extra 15 millilitres. Normally, a can like this would be 330, so maybe that's playing a role in me thinking that this is heavy, but at the same time, 15 millilitres isn't really going to do all that much, I would think. But yeah, this thing is dense as shit. So yeah, craziness. But yeah, the aroma of this is absolutely lovely. So big thumbs up to Augustinus for this. It smells absolutely lovely. So yeah, straight away with this one then, as I say, you can feel the vanilla jumping out of this beer at you. You get a lovely big kind of chocolatey element to this one too, so it's got a big milky chocolate character to it as well, like I said. So lovely big milky kind of chocolatey elements to this beer. It's awesome. You can get a little bit of a darker bitter chocolate in there, but I think most of the chocolate that comes out of this beer is is leaning towards that more milky side of things because of the vanilla. But yeah, it smells absolutely lovely, this one, but a lot of brown sugar in here, a big treacle molasses sort of thing with this one. I really like how it goes about its business in that sense. So this is obviously, I think this is double mash and a very, very long boil at the same time. So yeah, I think they would have had a hell of a time scrubbing the brew kit after this beer. But yeah, it's absolutely lovely. Yeah, you can smell there's a little touch of a kind of breadiness to this one, but as we say, it's a big, big syrupy beer. A hell of a lot of brown sugar, a lot of chocolate, and a lot of vanilla. There's 1 or 2 woody and nutty aromas come out of it. But yeah, I really like how this one goes about its business, absolutely. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, I would say that this beer is there's not too much to report in that sense. I mean, you get a little bit of earthiness out of it. You get a little bit of a kind of floral character in there as well, but these are all quite minimal, especially if this beer is 2 years old or something like that, or if it's I think it maybe was brewed in 2020 and it's a rebrew. So if it is 2020, I'll be drinking this one a little bit over a year old, so quite a bit of the hoppy character will have gone out of that. But in fairness, I do still get a little bit of floral character and a slight grassiness out of the beer. But remember, the longer you keep an Imperial Stout, the hoppy character is going to drop out and smoothen out in a sense. But yeah, again, the Imperial Stouts are not the most forward of of hoppy styles of beer. But yeah, I do like how that goes together. But yeah, the hoppy side of things, a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of floral character, and then a wee touch of a kind of smooth grassy element there. But on the fruity side of things, it's interesting. You do get a little touch of a raisiny note in this one. You can smell a little bit of a more kind of oily plum to the beer as well. But certainly I get quite a little bit of a figgy and blackcurranty note to the beer. I'm not sure if there's a kind of more oily blackberry, but I'd be curious to know what hop they would have used in this one. Could it be a little bit of Eureka or something like that from the States? Eureka's got these lovely kind of berryish notes actually. But there's a few different hops that can give you these berryish sort of things. You know, Northern Brewer from Germany will do it. Summit, I think, is quite a popular one for stouts as well. Eureka. Barbe Rouge from France is a kind of outside bet as well. But the Brazilians, I think, have quite a few of their own hops. And they're developing more of them down there from what I understand as well. So it'll be interesting to try a few Brazilian IPAs with Brazilian hops in them at some stage. But I think, you know, maybe Augustinus, I don't know if they're the brewery for that. You're maybe wanting to look more at like Trilha or Trilha are more sour, or kind of more sour breweries. Maybe you want to look at the likes of Diva for something like that. These guys are a big malty brewery from what I understand. But yeah, the aroma out of this one is lovely. So a little bit of raisin, big oily kind of juicy plum, and then you've got the lighter figgy and blackcurranty notes underneath, and just a wee touch of blackberry as well. But yeah, the malty side of things is quite straight shooting in this one, but it just comes across as being really intense in terms of its aroma. But yeah, other than that, I think there's not too much to say about the aroma in this one, but it's beautiful. Definitely take a little bit of time to just ponder over the aroma of this beer before you have a taste of it. But I think it is about time for us to taste this beer then. So yeah, this one is the Cacao, 11.5% Imperial Stout with vanilla and cocoa nibs added into it from Cervejaria Augustinus in Sao Paulo down in Brazil. Let's get stuck into this one and see how we go. Slange, skull, cheers and felicidades. There we go. Yeah, a little bit different to how I thought it was going to be. It's actually, instead of being like a really big, thick, oily sort of thing, it's actually, it does have that, but it's actually very, very, very smooth, this one. That's not quite what I expected from this, but it's a beautiful, beautiful beer nonetheless. So big thumbs up to Augustinus for this one actually. This is lovely. I have to say, I would be curious to try some of their other beers because I know they've got a few barrel-aged ones and things like that as well. But this certainly is very, very nice. I can't remember how many of the Augustinus beers they had on Beer Dome when I picked this one out, but I think, to be honest, I think there was maybe 2 or 3 Imperial Stouts, and I picked this one because I liked the artwork on it. Sometimes when you're trying a beer from a brewery that you don't know, that's what decides it. But I liked the artwork on this one. I thought it was pretty cool. But certainly that logic of choice hasn't let me down with this beer. This is lovely. Big thumbs up to them, like I say. Let's try and break down the flavour a little bit more for you and describe it. But first impressions of this beer, very smooth. It does have a little bit of a roasty backbone to it as well, which I quite like. But yeah, big kind of smooth, oily stout, this one actually. So, yeah, where do we start with this one then? So the backbone of this beer is really interesting because there's a couple of different things going on. You can feel a little bit of that toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. That goes right across the back. That goes right across the back of the middle third of your palate there. But sitting on top of that, you can feel that sort of powdery cocoa nib sort of thing. If you think about the chocolate powder that you would use, for if you think about the chocolate powder you would use, you know, like Nesquik, or in Sweden, oh boy, we would use, you know, these chocolate powders that you use to make chocolate milk and hot chocolate and things. That's what the backbone of this beer really reminds me of. So you've got that toasty, well-fired bread crust in there, and then on top of that you've got that sort of dryish cocoa powder type thing coming out of this. But it's really very, very nice actually. So yeah, those are the 2 base layers there. So in that middle third of your palate, in the front half, just underneath the sort of front half, of that middle third of your tongue. You'll get a few woody and slightly nutty elements to the beer as well. So yeah, I really like that about this. I really like that about this beer for sure. Yeah, the fruity side, I would say the fruity side, the kind of malty side of this beer is actually quite straight shooting. But I think it's really well done, and you will feel that this beer gets a little bit roastier and toastier the further you go into the aftertaste. And I like that about these stouts that are meant to be a bit more kind of sweet in a sense. I do like a lot of stouts just to remind you, yeah, this is an Imperial stout. The roasty toasty ones, of course, tend to be the Russian Imperials. So this beer does have a little bit of that more modern kind of sweet stout vibe to it, but it still has a wee bit of the Russian Imperial, more, you know, kind of toasty backbone to it. So yeah, this one really strikes a very nice balance actually. I can see why these guys are getting quite highly rated. I would love to see them collaborate with Nerd Brewing here in Sweden. Actually, that would be pretty awesome if they could do that. So yeah, I do like how this goes about its business. But yeah, awesome stuff. So in terms of the on top of that kind of chocolatey layer, like I was saying, you potentially have a wee touch of a kind of brown bready note to this one. There is a wee bit of a slightly sweeter brown bready element there, but then on top of that, you get a lot of, for me, there's like a big circle in the very middle of your palate, and you can feel those big, highly treacle, caramelised brown sugars in there. You can feel they're just extremely thick, so to me that indicates a very long boil when they've brewed this beer. Potentially as well a double mash. This beer does feel like just extremely thick, so it's maybe it's one or the other or a combination. I'm not 100% sure, but if you go to you can feel those brown sugars. There is a little bit of they're kind of layered in a sense, so the backbone of the brown sugars is a little bit more kind of toasted and dark. On top of that, as I say, you get a nice big kind of oily, you get that nice big sort of oily treacle molasses sort of thing. Then you do potentially get just a little bit of sweetness on top of it as well. So I really like how that goes about its business in this beer, that's for sure. But yeah, the brown sugary side of things is quite nice. I would say though that takes a back seat to it does take a little bit of a back seat to the chocolatey side of the beer. The other thing is, as you can tell as well, I've not really mentioned the vanilla yet, and I think, the vanilla, has taken a back seat to the cocoa nibs in this one. I think the cocoa nibs are the dominant of the two. I think the cocoa nibs really dominate this one, and it has that nice dry but smooth powdery cocoa nib chocolate to it. But yeah, as I say, middle of the palate on this one, sitting on top of that slightly bready layer that you've got, big circle, that big sort of ovally type thing where you get all those big oily brown sugary elements in there, toasty brown sugars underneath, big oily treacly molasses on top of that. It doesn't come across overly sweet in the brown sugars either, which is quite interesting. But the further you go into the aftertaste, on the front half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the vanilla coming out, and you develop a little bit more of a kind of woody flavour to this beer as well, actually. So the vanilla is there, but as I say, I really think it takes a back seat to the more powdery, chocolatey notes that come out of this beer. So keep that in mind. Yeah. So the middle third of your palate in this one is quite interesting. Let's just say that. But yeah, on the back third of the palate, and I think we've covered the middle third of your palate as much as we can. You can see then this beer, it's not the most complex of things, but I think it's one of these ones that's just really nicely brewed, and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of that kind of brown bready kind of thing, a bit of a more intense kind of toasty, bread crusty sort of thing. Then the back of that front third of your palate, or the back third of your palate I should say, you can feel the roasty, toasty, bread crusty notes again. There's a bit of a thicker brown bready note in there. Then on top of that you can feel a little bit of the more airy, yeasty sort of thing. So From that back part of the palate there, you can feel that comes forward. It kind of condenses down a little bit. You can feel that you know, on the very back of the palate, you can feel the beer's a little bit taller, but it condenses down quite a bit. It's one of these ones where it kind of almost goes exponential. The beer, the tallness of the flavour just kind of goes down like that and condenses as you move from the back third of your palate to the front of the middle third of your palate. So yeah, this beer really condenses down in terms of the compactness of the flavours. But I think that suits it. It does work. On the hoppy side of things then, I think we've said everything we need to about the yeasty and malty side. In the back corners of the palate, there's definitely a wee bit of earthiness there, but it feels quite smooth. Again, that's partially due to the age of the beer, but as you move further forward, that earthiness creeps forward a little bit. There's maybe a wee tiny herbal element in there, but as you reach the front corners of the palate, you do get some remnants of a floral aromaticity to the beer. So there is a wee bit of hop character to this one, but not overly much, I would say. And the other thing I would say, the more and more that you drink of this one, I think the brown sugars do start to sweeten up a little bit. I'm noticing that in the middle of the palate, I'm starting to get a little bit more sweetness out of these brown sugars, so just be aware of that. But yeah, as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate there, you get a nice little bit of floral aromaticity. Then round the front curve of the tongue, there is a little bit of a lighter grassy sort of thing, and oddly enough, I do get a wee touch of zestiness off the grassy part of the beer. So I think that's another interesting little bit of depth to this beer too, which is great. But let's focus on that front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again there's a wee bit of a bready build up to this one. A little bit of a toasty well-fired bread crust. The base of the beer is a little bit more, sort of bready, you know, sort of bready and you know, toasty if you like, and then on top of that you've got a nice little bit of an oily, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So I like that one. I do like how the fruity side of this beer goes together as well, but I think the backbone of the fruity part of the beer, it's got a wee bit of a toasty bread crust and a brown bready sort of thing, which is interesting for sure. But yeah, sitting on that fruity side of things then, when you take the beer in, at the back of the front third of your palate, on top you get a wee bit of a raisiny note out of the beer. You almost get a little bit of cakiness on that back, on the back part of that front third of your palate as well, like a sort of really thick chocolate brownie, or kladdkaka as we would say in Sweden. So you get a little bit of that, so you can feel a bit of raisin on top, there's a bit of a juicy plum in there, then underneath you've got a little bit of a figgy note, and as you move further forward into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of black curranty sort of thing. Then on top of that you get a little bit of a blackberry type note in there. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. I mean, I would say that overall it's quite well balanced between the more juicy figgy curranty notes and also the more kind of oily and sharp things from the raisin and the blackberry. So this beer really has a little bit of both in that sense, and it suits it. But yeah, I think you get more cakiness out of this beer. You can feel a bit of the kind of bitterness underneath, and then the juicy fruits just sit on top of that, and the juicy fruits just sit a little bit on top of that and work out quite nicely. So yeah, the fruity parts of the beer in this one really work out quite well, I would say. But I think that's everything we really need to say about the flavour of this beer. This beer in a lot of ways is quite straight shooting, and I think that it's the cocoa nibs that take the lead in this, and it sweetens up a little bit the more that you drink of it as well. But yeah, it's got a lot of dry smoothness to this one, and it is a nice sipper, I would say. So thumbs up to Augustinus for this one. So let's round off with the mouthfeel then. Undoubtedly this is a full-bodied beer. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a very kind of silky, thick sort of thing to it, that's for sure. So yeah, it's a big, thick, silky beer, this one. I think it's leaning towards the top end of full-bodied as well, but very, very silky, I would say. In terms of bitterness, I don't think this beer is overly bitter. I think we're talking about 50 or 60 IBUs in this one. There's my alarm going off. But yeah, 50 or maybe 50 or 60 IBUs in this one. I think the chocolate is adding to that, and the sort of powdered character of the chocolate sort of adds a little bit of dryness and bitterness to the beer. But yeah, the malty base does sweeten up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste as well. The fruits, as I say, there's a little bit of sharpness to them, but a nice little bit of juicy character and oiliness in there as well. But yeah, this beer, I think, yeah, 60 IBUs, malt base has a bit of dryness underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, then it starts to get sweeter later on, as we say. But yeah, this is another really, really solid Brazilian beer, and at this stage I'm not surprised. So big thumbs up to Cervejaria Augustinus for this one, and I would like to try more of their beers. I saw they had a barley wine, but I don't know whether they do that anymore. I think they brew their beers like 2 or 3 times and then develop a new recipe, and there was quite a few beers pardon me, that I saw listed on the Untappd that they say are not produced anymore. But I'll keep an eye on Beer Dome and see if we can get a different style from these guys next time, or a different kind of stout. Let's just see what we can do. But yeah, we can leave it there. So this one was the Cacao, an 11.5% Imperial Stout with cocoa nibs and vanilla added into it from Cervejaria Augustinus, a gypsy brewery, contract brewery I guess we could say, operating in Sao Paulo down in Brazil. Lovely beer this, quite straight shooting in a sense, but just really, really well crafted, this beer. I think that sums it up quite nicely. So yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Cervejaria Augustinus, and we will return to these guys at some point soon. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Cervejaria Augustinus' social media. If you're interested in Brazilian beers, check out the range available at beerdome.nl. So see you guys in the next review. This has been awesome, and more Brazilian beer reviews to come. Slancha, Skål, cheers, and felicidades.